For Gen Z and millennials, growing up, being on Disney Channel or Nickelodeon was one of the biggest dreams because of the fact that we all saw that these stars were like huge A-list celebrities to us. Mostly because we saw them all the time on TV, growing up, the network's original movies, we heard their music when they start like their own like singing careers. Both networks played a huge part in shaping how we all thought that childhood stardom was going to be like. And we were all sold this idea that child stars could do anything that they wanted to. Because they had lots of money, they can get into any party and club before the age of 18 and 21. They just had all this freedom. And like, we saw a lot of like behind the scenes clips of like shows and like movies that they were working on, and it all seemed like working on these networks were so fun, and it didn't feel like work at all. And to some extent it is true, but what we didn't know was that growing up in front of the world is a very unique experience and also pretty traumatic. Over the years, many stars have talked about their struggles with fame and trying to break from the Nickelodeon Disney Channel curse, with some with good results and some taking more extreme risk to separate themselves from the network, and then some who have gone off the wagon. That's been well documented in the press and tabloids, and then there are some who are no longer with us. And this is only just stars in my generation, the generation that grew up with Nickelodeon and Disney Channel the most, which would be millennials and my generation, Gen Z. What's always like fascinated me over the years as I started like realizing like all of this like happening, because this has been happening more and more recently within the last 3, 4 years, the disillusion of the networks when stars started coming out with their own stories. What's always fascinated me was, even though that these people came from different networks, there was always like a huge difference between Disney Channel stars and Nickelodeon stars, and there's a lot of factors to it, and I'm also going to be bringing up some similarities along the way. So that's what we're going to be doing for this episode. So, without further ado, hello and welcome back to Let's Discuss with Nick Marshall. I'm your host, and we're going to be talking about the differences between Disney Channel and Nickelodeon stars. I'm mostly going to be bringing up their branding, their significance, their scandals, and like separating the art from the artists to kind of like even things out with some similarities. So let's just get into it. So uh, the first thing is like branding. Like I said, the branding for both networks is very much similar, but it's different. I mean, the branding for like both networks is similar, but it's not necessarily the same. If you're a person who again watched both networks, both Nickelodeon and Disney Channel within the 90s, the 2000s, and the early 2010s, you already like have some idea of where I'm going with this. How the branding shapes their stars and how it shaped their shows too. Because again, there's similarities, but it's not necessarily the same. For Disney Channel, the House of Mouse in general is like a huge powerhouse when it comes to creating its stars, and some of the biggest A-listers of today are stars who did come from Disney Channel, like Miley Cyrus, Selena Gomez, Zendaya, Demi Lovato, to name a few. And they do have a history of creating like triple threats who can sing, dance, act, and most importantly, the very most important thing to Disney is all of their stars are media trained to the bone. You can tell that are very well media trained. In fact, they have mentioned it in some interviews and like online I remember like the Jonas Brothers saying like they had to like do a boot camp to like answer like certain like media questions if they like get asked something that they don't really want to like comment on in interviews. They'll just like avoid it and like just be vague about it and just like bring up something else. It's impressive, and they really do set them up for that life of Hollywood. Their branding like mostly consists of like trying to market their stars as like wholesome and family friendly, a very sanitized version of themselves, because when you're working for Disney, you also like obviously like when you're working for like any studio, you become more of a product when you're are a child star. And it's very hard to like grasp that. It's not really like normal to like brand a child, because there's like you're kind of like stifling them actually growing up, and we'll get to that later on. That becomes a problem with them themselves and then the public, and then it gets into like an awkward like inappropriate back and forth, mostly from like the audience, because like I'll explain later how it becomes inappropriate. But like I said, they do market them as a very wholesome, sanitized version of themselves, and because of this, it's very hard for them to like break out of it. And also, their likeness in youth is captured on screen forever, so people will begin to think that that's how they are in real life, and that's going to be the same for Nickelodeon. But because of this, well, anyway, because of all this like branding and them having like a good sense to like produce like triple threats and preparing them for all of this success, being on Disney Channel is a much more better chance of having a more long-lasting career, because of the fact that Disney has more connections in the industry than Nickelodeon. And well, first off, like Disney itself is almost like 100 years old, and it's been in the old Hollywood space since then. And while Disney was very innovative, he actually like, you can look this up, he actually was able to like help create like a whole like other like Oscar category for specifically for animation, and he got a special Oscar for the creation of Mickey Mouse. So Disney is a very connected like company within Hollywood, and it has more connections. Nickelodeon also has their connections too, but like it operates within a like their own specific niche of audience that it won't produce so much like opportunities to an extent. And in comparison, Disney Channel is a more better route to go on if you want more like long lasting longevity or like some form of like relevance. Moving on to Nickelodeon. Now, I said that Nickelodeon operates within its own like niche audience market within Hollywood, and it's true. And Nickelodeon is in like a different sort of league with its stars. Like Disney, they do market to like teens and young audiences and kids, but like its shows have more like edge. It's more like wacky. It's not really like, it's more like there's more like slapstick, like tongue in cheek. And this is all kind of like thanks to like a very problematic creator, Dan Snyder, who worked on the network for years and years, but we'll get to him. We'll get to the bastard. But like anyway, it did like produce a lot of like, oh, like more like fun, like iconic, edgy, like more fun like shows that like lasted like in the public's minds, like iCarly and Victorious. And then some of the stars that came from Nickelodeon have reached like great long-term success, like Ariana Grande, who appeared on Victorious, and now she's had like a very long-lasting music career to this day, and she's now been starring in the Wicked movie, and part two's coming out, and part one came out last year, and I saw it, and she did pretty like, it was weird seeing her on screen again, if I'm being honest, because I haven't seen her on screen since Victorious, but she's like, I never realized, I don't know, I just never realized how much I missed her on screen. And then there are stars who have more like medium comfortable success that but they're still like in the public eye and they still have like relevance like Liz Gillies, Miranda Cosgrove, Victoria Justice, and the list goes on to an extent. But because of the fact that like again, like I said, that Nickelodeon has a smaller bubble and it has a very specific audience, you know, the stars' careers often don't go that far beyond Nickelodeon. And the sad part is like anything like it kind of like freezes in place, making it sort of like impossible for them to separate themselves from the network even more than Disney Channel in comparison. However, there are cases where like people from Disney Channel have a much more harder time, but that's only because like they have more of a bigger like brand to the channel. Just like how some stars from Nickelodeon have more of a bigger like I don't know, they have more like bigger relevance to the network and they were like promoted more and like there's just so many stars under contract at both networks, but there's only like a few that you'll see on the network and be promoted the most. It's obvious who gets promoted more in both networks. So within the significance of like how these stars affected our childhoods, it's no like denying that like the stars from both networks have had a big impact on our lives growing up. And in the 2000s, when the networks were at their peak, teen girls were the superstars of that era, and they were the main market to promote girl power was in, and it was markable with fashion, friendship, and like overall like the 90s like wave of like 90s and like 2000s wave of like post feminism where like people were under the impression that like, well, we got women the right to vote, they're working now, they have body like autonomy, so like we finished all these like little milestones, so like feminism is over and we don't have to like do that much of it, which led to a lot of like very like problematic and like misogynistic like press and then movies and then like very like it gets there's like a whole like there's many videos on YouTube like talking about that era of like post feminism in the 2000s. In fact, well, there's like a lot of I can like there's like a lot, but like I recommend you like check out the Takes video. Like there's a YouTube channel called The Take which talks about like certain like tropes in movies and like pop culture things, and it has a video on post feminism of the 2000s. So just look up that and it'll talk about that. But in a nutshell, like I said, in the 2000s, girl power was in, and so shows like iCarly, Lizzie McGuire, and what else? That's So Raven, Kim Possible. That's a cartoon, but like girl power was in, and it was a good time. And teenage girlhood was a very like it was made to be more like enjoyable because like you're seeing yourself on screen. Well, I'm not seeing myself, but you know what I mean. Like people were seeing themselves depicted like realistically and relatably, on screen. Well, not everyone was seeing themselves, but like a good bit of people were. The girls made pop culture back then more fun. It was interesting. Pop culture died in 2009, as they keep saying, and I can't. I mean, like they're right. It was really because of like the drama the media kept loving to spin within these girls. It was really because of the fact that because of the drama that the media will love to spin around feuds and like boyfriends and typical high school like drama, which was very like on brand because like a lot of these girls were still high school age, and then there were some who still acted like they were in high school well into their 20s. I'm not naming names, I'm not being shady, I mean Paris Hilton, but like we're not being shady anyway. That's whatever. And mm. And there are a lot of like it girls in the 2000s, like Lindsay Lohan, who came from Disney. Sort of. She's sort of a Disney kid. There were it girls from Nickelodeon, like Amanda Bynes. There are a lot of like it girls in the 2000s, and they were mostly like running the show of like what's popular. Like they're all in the headlines all the time. People were just simply so interested in their drama, a lot of it in their personal lives, and then it became like very invasive because of paparazzi. Paparazzi back in the 2000s was like so hectic. If you don't believe me, you can just simply like look up 2000s paparazzi on YouTube and you'll see many videos. I won't be surprised if you'll mostly like see videos of Britney Spears on YouTube with paparazzi, but like you'll mostly like see them very like invasive, like all up in their space, like following them everywhere they go. You'll see how what I'm talking about if you don't believe me. Obviously you know this, but like anyway. But it wasn't like just the girls who were like running pop culture, obviously. There weren't just it girls, there were also male stars from both networks and networks beyond, like who were like ruling pop culture in the 2000s and the early 2010s. These guys were like very like heartthrobs. For example, Zac Efron from High School Musical. A lot of people like had crushes on Zac Efron. Another some people some examples from Nickelodeon were like I looked it up. It was Drake Bell, Yvonne Joja. He played Beck on Victorious. And one that definitely like came to mind who were definitely like heartthrobs in the 2010s were Big Time Rush. And it's just show that like I hate that I forget sometimes because of like all the it girls and like the heartthrobs of this era of like both networks and then like stars who weren't in the networks. It got weird when like the public and the media often like sexualized the stars, both male and female, but they expected them to like act like a certain way. They still expected them to like act like kids, and then they got upset like when like they acted like their own age or like did adult adjacent shit. I mentioned this like earlier, but like we really did like look up to these stars and also like wanted to like be their friends like so bad because like we all thought that they were so cool and they were so like fun. It's just amazing how we would put these stars on a pedestal to an extent, and we know that like there's like we know that they're human and they can be just as like messy and they can be complete jerks in real life if they are. We don't know that. I don't personally know them. You don't personally know them. But I don't know. It's just like it's interesting. And it's funny how like we all had like such huge crushes on them. But it did get weird like when we all like just the public in general just like started to like very like sexualize these stars at a very young age, and it just I don't know, it's just mm, mm, mm. Now we can get into like the what if stars. These are okay. Let me like try that again. Then there are the what if stars of Nickelodeon and Disney Channel who fell off the map or who are no longer with us. The ones who had a very like promising future, but life and circumstances had other plans. And I only like picked like 2 stars for like this little like segment. There are more, obviously, but like these are like stars that like I've grew up with and stars who I just want to like pay tribute to because one is no longer long one is has passed away, and I feel like you already like know who I'm talking about. Obviously, I just want to like pay tribute to like both of them. Anyway, so here we go for like the what if stars who really did like have a huge like promising future and career. Yeah, the first one is from Nickelodeon, Amanda Bynes. And to pay a little bit of tribute to her, she was a former child star who got her big break from her set, The Comedy Factory, and later appeared on Nickelodeon with her show, The Amanda Show. And later, after she left, she starred in the show What I Like About You. And she had an impressive movie catalog with movies like Hairspray and She's the Man. And even though she achieved success in the 2000s, her personal life was causing her trouble from like dealing with stage parents, body image issues. Some people would say it was like from being typecast as like the quirky, like funny girl, and then also like comparing her to stars like Lindsay Lohan, and then the possible mental health problems which caused her to crash out, and then leading her to quit acting after seeing herself in the movie Easy A, which was the last movie that anyone ever saw her in. And nowadays she's sort of like keeping like a very like low profile. Last year she was like, I don't want to like, I'm not saying this like, I'm not saying this like be hurtful or like, I'm not saying this in a malicious way, but like, I think it was 2 years ago when people saw her like wandering around, like kind of like in a psychosis. I think she was having like sort of a breakdown, but she was aware she was having a breakdown, and she just simply got help immediately because she was like wandering aimlessly around the street. I don't remember that much about that story that I heard, but she that did happen. And then recently, like this year, she had like a gallery show, and then she started like a podcast which lasted like one episode. And even though it seems like, I guess like even from like this year, it seemed like she was doing okay, fans are still very concerned about her, and she had like a conservatorship, and I think that ended. I don't really like, I haven't really like followed that much of her situation because it's not really like my business. I did not grow up with Amanda Bynes because I was born in 2006, so she was already like at her peak and kind of like going through her own stuff at that time. And I think the Amanda Show and all that was kind of like already cut off from Nickelodeon at that point. I don't remember. I don't remember. But I did watch some of her movies like Hairspray and my own personal favorite, She's the Man. I think that's her funniest movie. And she does comedy very well. She's a very funny person. And obviously, like, she can steal whatever scene she's in. And I find it very impressive that she like got her start at the Laugh Factory, and also the fact that she already had her own show. She wanted to do like fashion. She was very passionate about that. And I feel like she could have like achieved all of that if she didn't have very like toxic people around her. It's just like it's unfortunate they happened, but like all you can do with that situation, because it's like completely out of all of our control, is just simply hope for the best and that hope that she's doing well. This is a star from Disney Channel who is no longer with us. I think you guessed who it is if you made this far. Cameron Boyce. So to pay tribute to him, a little bit of a overview. A former Disney star who appeared in shows like Jessie, Gamer's Guide to Pretty Much Anything, and then, of course, the Descendants franchise. He got his big break appearing alongside Adam Sandler in the Grown Up movies, which was a good way to like start his career because Adam Sandler was like starring along with Adam Sandler in the 2000s, because he was like in every movie in the 2000s, because like all of his movies were pretty like people just loved his movies anyway. I don't really follow his career, but anyway. Unfortunately, as you know, Cameron died July 6, 2019 at the age of 20 due to a seizure of epilepsy, which he struggled with for most of his life. He really did have a promising career. ahead of him because of his resume and the fact that Disney still wanted to keep him in projects, and he had good relationships with his fellow actors, and that the network still wanted to like promote him and stuff. And Cameron really did like care about a lot of issues facing the world, and he had I remember like a video. I remember like I still have this in my liked videos on YouTube, but like I remember him talking. Okay, it was his birthday, and if you remember correctly, he was like doing like a whole like charity where he was like asking people to like donate like $1 to a cause for people. He just simply cared about a lot of like things. Not a lot of things. He cared about a lot of issues facing the world, a lot of social issues, and he did work hard to like spur awareness, donate some money, get people involved. He generally cared. He actually gave a shit. And I liked how he did use his voice within that period of time to like do the best he can. And it paid off well because like he has his own like little foundation, like the Cameron Boyce Foundation that is still like run by his family. And I feel like if Cameron Boyce was alive today, he would have like dominated the indie film genre because like he made like 3 projects before his death. He made this movie called Runt. He starred in a series Paradise City. He also had a little bit of an appearance in Mrs. Fletcher, a show that appeared on Hulu. And I watched a little bit of Runt. I'm trying to like finish the movie because like I don't know, I just wanted to like see him on screen again. And I've also like started watching Paradise City. So I might do an episode based on Cameron Boyce. So that's a potential episode. But also, wait, I forgot to mention this one little thing. Also, I feel like he would have dominated the Marvel genre because he also like voiced the character in Disney Channel Spider-Man. I don't remember like which Spider-Man, but like I'll put a video up too, so you'll see. But Cameron Boyce, that was the first celebrity death that hit close to home to me because like he's 6 years older than me, and I was 13 when he died. I really feel for his loved ones the most. I feel for China. I feel for Karen, the rest of his Jesse cast, the descendants of Cameron, his sister, his parents, his father, like literally just everyone in his life, because it's just, it doesn't make sense really. He still had like a whole lot of life to live, and like this was like the first time for me like when like mortality, like especially like when someone close to your age or like who's like a few years older than you like dies, and you kind of like get that realization that you're not gonna live like forever. Last little segment: scandals and separating the art from the artist. Being a child star, like I keep saying throughout this whole episode, is like not all sunshine and rainbows. In recent years, a lot of shit came out against networks over the years. The biggest scandals overall in the recent years have been against a little bit of a creator named Dan Snyder, who created iCarly, Victoria, Sam and Cat, Zoe 101, all that, Henry Danger, Drake and Josh, etc. Look, the man has a lot of history of like allegedly creating a hostile work environment and being very inappropriate with his child stars such as Amanda Bynes, allegedly, and giving them alcohol and giving them like back rubs according to Jeanette McCurdy, allegedly. And revelations have caused fans to look at old videos of their favorites with an uncomfortable feeling that Dan sexualized them. Allegedly. I have to say like allegedly. I feel like I have to like say allegedly because like I don't think it's been taken like to court. allegations, even though it's like a constant like pattern and like multiple people said a lot of things, but like I don't know if it's been like truly like convicted or not, so I have to like sprinkle allegedly around these little topics because again, legally, I don't know. I don't have the money. So, yeah, a lot of this has like caused people to like look at Nickelodeon in a very side-eye way because of the fact that like they kept Dan Snyder on all these years and he was doing all these things and the network knew that and they still protected Dan anyway, allegedly. Yeah, allegedly, whatever. Now, Disney Channel is no stranger to hiring shady people on kid shows. There was a man named Brian Peck who was hired to work as a dialogue coach on The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, but he was found convicted of sexual abuse in 2003, but was hired anyway, but he was later fired due to reports that came to life. And I feel like they knew about these reports, but they still hired them anyway, but like they say that they did not know, but like I feel like I feel like I'm calling bullshit on them because like people do background checks on people when they're hiring them, specifically if they're working with kids. It's just I feel like I have to call bullshit because I feel like they just knew and then just got leaked to the press and now they look bad and then it's like whatever. It's whatever. Now, let's get down to the real nitty-gritty, which is the fact of what I kept saying is how like their branding kind of like made them impossible to like break free from like the networks, and it's separating the art from the artist. People have a hard time separating stars from their characters they played, and on one hand, I can understand the feeling of like relating to a character and like having that character like get you through like very hard times of your life, having feeling like this star is like your friend. You also have like a ridiculous like school kid crush on them and you just want to like be friends with them. It's like oh like also like so innocent, like oh it's so like cringy, like predictable, like whatever. But like these are real people and they're just simply playing characters. And the stars from both networks have tried separating themselves from their child star image, and a good bit have done that, successfully done that. And then there's some who the results have varied. Stars like Zendaya take on the gradual approach of like taking on different roles and like appearing in like some stuff here and there, some adjacent to like their old roles, and then they kind of like full on like go into the like they just full on go into like a fully different role and break out like with her role with like Rue and Euphoria, and people weren't thinking about her being a Disney girl then, but just took on different roles, some more adult than the next. And then when she finally like starred in Euphoria, people were fully starting to like grasp she wasn't like on Disney Channel anymore. Well, some weren't, but like some people still like viewed her as such, and she still had like young audiences. Like there was like this one video when she was doing press for Euphoria's first season. She was with the other cast, and then she heard like a little girl's voice, and she was like so terrified that like she was gonna like see all the shit that was in like the first episode of Euphoria, and she was like quickly saying, "Please don't tell me you're here to see like the show." This all did her well because like she won like 2 Emmys for the first and second season. I was definitely proud of like of her because one, Zendaya, I'm a forever Zendaya stan. She my girl. She has the key to my heart. The key to my heart. Just an icon. The reason why she was able to like separate herself from the studio career wise was because of the fact that she wasn't like so quick to like kick it to the side. She never like actively avoided the fact that she was on Disney Channel. In fact, when she was asked questions from from her career on Disney Channel, she just like civilly just answered, and she just wasn't so like hell bent on like separating herself completely. However, that wasn't the case for other stars like Miley Cyrus. Miley Cyrus did the more extreme route to like separating herself from Disney Channel with a very good reason, because she was a very big brand to Disney Channel. The main example being Hannah Montana. And Hannah Montana was like the biggest star on Disney Channel, the biggest show on Disney Channel. Everyone loved Hannah Montana. It was Miley Cyrus's alter ego. And she at the time just didn't really want to be associated with Hannah Montana anymore. So 2013 came, her Bangers era started. She was doing like a whole black scent. Wrecking Ball came out. She was allegedly twerking at the I don't remember which music awards show, but like she was twerking on Robin Thicke. We all know this. So she was basically like doing so much to like separate herself from Hannah Montana, and it got a very like negative result. The negative results being people were like judging her. They were like slut shaming her a little bit. She was doing, they kept saying she was doing too much. Why are you doing, Miley Cyrus? A lot of people were just simply not really like it. Just had like a whole lot of a mixed review. So much to the point where like Miley Cyrus even herself makes fun of to an extent, to say, saying that like, you know, she herself kind of like regret the extreme route she took in 2013, and she kind of like cringes at it to this day. But like, I feel like it's hard for her to like break out of like Disney because of the fact that yes, she is a huge brand to Disney, and she was marketed the most throughout the whole channel. However, there were other stars. Obviously, there were like Raven Simone, and she's been working in the industry for years, longer than Miley Cyrus, and she never really like got the same opportunities as Miley Cyrus did for various other reasons. I mean, we could say like it was low-key racism to an extent. I say to an extent because of the fact that like, I say to an extent, but also not really to an extent, because of like how Disney markets black people versus white people, how it markets women versus, you know, men on the channel. Obviously, you're gonna promote girls over boys when it comes to the Disney Channel, because of the fact that like there was just like more of a teenage girl audiences, and they just want to like see themselves more up front versus seeing boys all the time on Disney Channel. However, you did want to like see heartthrobs like Zac Efron or like or Corbin Blue. He's also a heartthrob, obviously. I can't think of anyone else. But like, nonetheless, I don't know. It's it's fine. And then there are like stars. You know, there are stars who took an extreme route. Then there are stars who just simply quit the industry altogether, like Jeanette McCurdy, for good reasons, and you'll see in the next episode. Nonetheless, it's important to remember, like I said in the beginning, that these are just real people, and they're just simply playing these characters, and we are just simply doing too much. And finally, just my own final thoughts to like kind of like close out this this attempt to like kind of like talk about their differences and their similarities at the same time. Both networks, I don't know, like, again, like my generation, Gen Z and millennials, like being on both networks or either networks was like, again, it was like one of the ultimate dreams, because of the fact that like it just seemed like a lot of fun, and also we wanted to like be like these stars, and they were truly A-listers to us because of the fact that we just saw them all the time. And it was nice seeing people our age on screen kind of like doing like just simply like living their best life, living like the high glamorous life. But like, we were also kind of like idealizing a certain lifestyle that's not always cracked up to be. And we kind of like miss out the point that like these people have also given up their childhood to create our childhood, and the fact that like growing up like I've said earlier, growing up in the public eye can be very traumatizing because your likeness in youth is kind of like immortalized forever on screen or in interviews or your songs or like it's always like immortalized. Like the age you become famous at is like it's like the age you'll kind of like mentally feel for a while. Like if you get famous at 16, then you'll just feel 16 forever because like everyone will be treating you exactly how they treat you when you're like 16 and you just took off. It feels very like it's like a weird enticing trap. Childhood stardom does feel like that at times. It's very like enticing to like kind of like fall into the trap of like, oh, child stardom is so great and like being on Nickelodeon Disney Channel is it'll just be fun all the time. It won't feel like work, it won't feel like a trap. But like sometimes it did to these stars and like we don't know because not everyone's gonna be like talking about it because they signed NDAs and like they just legal reasons, but like just know when some stars have like spoke out about like some of their negative experiences, it's like pretty likely like some similar things have happened to like other stars, like Jeanette McCurdy. If she said that some negative things that like have happened to her on set of iCarly, and I do believe Jeanette, I really do, it's a good chance that it happened to Miranda, Nathan. Like it's pretty obvious, or it's pretty like something similar had happened. But again, they can't talk about it because of legal reasons. Jeanette was able to talk about it because she didn't take anything. But you'll find out when you'll either like know about this anyway, when if like if the Jeanette McCurdy episode came out before or after this, but like you'll see. I'll discuss more into depth about that. But like to kind of like close this off, despite all of this, I feel like I do feel lucky that like we did grow up with these stars. I feel like these stars have played a huge part in shaping our childhoods, giving us more company, and I feel like we should just simply have some discernment for these stars because like not everything is as it seems, and also we should just simply like say thank you for like making our childhoods more fun, magical, and just like making us be able to like imagine like something else. I don't know, but that's just my personal thoughts. But like anyway, that's kind of all I have for today. So thank you for listening to Let's Discuss. You can find the podcast on Spotify, YouTube, anywhere you stream podcast. You can follow the podcast on social media at Let's Discuss Podcast _ all lowercase. And you can follow me, Nick.Marshall02, all lowercase. And I hope you guys have a beautiful rest of your day, week, month, year. And I'll talk to you in the next one. All right. Bye. Okay. Bye.